for the Pledge of Allegiance. And one reason the flag is in the back of the room is because earlier this afternoon we had a really wonderful ceremony to swear in 8 new police officers. It's the biggest class, I think, probably Princeton has ever had. We have had quite a few retirements in the recent past, and also are anticipating several big retirements. But it was great to see all the young families there, and we also promoted Chris Morgan to captain this afternoon too. All right. Yes, thank you.
And Mayor, could I add that 2 of the new officers are Spanish speaking, which is something that I'm very thrilled about.
Yeah, it's great. So, yay. So we have one set of minutes on the agenda for tonight from November 19th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mayor, I just have a quick question. Should Councilman Williamson and I be voting on this?
I think actually Ms. Krummeler was absent, so probably the people who should be voting are the council people, the 3 council people who were present at the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's been moved by Mr. Quinn and seconded by Ms. Fraga?
Sure, I'll second.
Thank you. And are there any corrections to the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes pass. And next we come to announcements, and I'm very pleased tonight to introduce our new planner. Today is his first day. This is Michael Laplace. And Mark, did you want to introduce Michael, or I can invite Michael up just to say a few words if you want. We can put a name to the face.
Just 5-minute speech we were expecting.
Of course, I'm going to say a few words. I'm a planner, so no, I just wanted to thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. It was a great first day, and I feel it's an honor to be selected by Princeton to be in this position, and I can't wait to get started. So I just wanted to thank you all for making me a part of your team. I actually was a resident of Princeton several years ago, and it was a real happy part of my life, so I'm thrilled to be back here. So just thank you, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Welcome. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from you more. And you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but you don't have to. Also, you can sort of see how it goes. Next, we come to comments from the public for items that are not already on the agenda. And I think everybody who signed up to speak is signing up to speak for the ordinance to change the parking times on Witherspoon Street. So we did get quite a few emails over the weekend about this, and some of us had a chance to talk to Jackie and Brad about it. And I just want to say, like, we want to hear the public comment, but just in terms of the changes to the parking, it's like the reason why we're doing this is to help our businesses, and so it really helps to hear from you all when we're doing things that aren't helping. So I think we heard the message loud and clear. We understand that there needs to be the turnover in that section of on Witherspoon. We do have a public hearing scheduled for February 11th, so we still have to have the public hearing because it's been noticed. You all are welcome to come to the public hearing, but I think I speak for council when we say we heard too about the issues. So my recommendation is going to be that we hold the public hearing, but we don't act on the ordinance on the 11th. We're still collecting data. I think that when it comes to parking, there's obviously going to be multiple needs on every single block, but we want to be able to prioritize that turnover in areas where it's really needed. So with that, I would like to open it up, and the first person is Jacqueline Fay.
Good evening. I'm the owner of Grit and Polish, a nail and skincare salon that I opened in 2016, located at 160 Witherspoon Street. I'm here to speak against Ordinance 2019-1, which would create cheap all-day parking along Witherspoon Street and in front of my shop. I appreciate that Mayor Lempert, Councilman Quinn, have taken time this week to meet with me about my concerns. My business was founded on the idea of doing business the right way, paying fair wages, providing a clean environment, and being an asset to the community. These are not typical values for nail salons. I understand there are big problems in the uptown, big parking problems in the uptown sections of town along Nassau Street and Palmer Square. But your ordinance will barely make a dent in the problem, affecting only 30 spaces while forcing me and other nearby shops out of business. The Princeton Merchants Association does not support this plan as a reasonable response to the uptown parking problem. A far better plan is to use the large lot on Franklin Street as a temporary solution until affordable housing is built on that site in approximately 2 years. The problem with your plan is it would allow uptown employees to park all day in front of my salon for $6 per day. That's such a great deal, and those spaces will be gone by 9 in the morning. My customers will have no place to park. I realize there's a perception that these spaces are underutilized. That's because the businesses nearby have their peak hours from noon to 5. We don't have a coffee shop that would fill up parking in the morning. As of now, my business requires 5 to 7 parking spaces in the afternoon, Wednesday through Saturday, in order to meet my customers' needs. It's not reasonable to expect people wearing petty slippers to walk long distances to their car. I chose to do business in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood because as a Black and a Hispanic woman myself, I wanted to make a contribution to this historically significant neighborhood. Your proposal effectively turns Witherspoon into a long-term parking lot for uptown businesses while denying the neighborhood any chance to be a commercial district. That sends a terrible message not only to Witherspoon businesses, but to Witherspoon residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Leighton Newland.
Thank you, Mayor. I just realized getting up from my seat, I'm getting older, man. I'm stiff. Feel like an old man, but I guess that's what I am. But anyway, I came tonight to talk about the parking situation. And while I came in support of businesses on Witherspoon Street, I must quickly object to the alternative of parking being the Franklin Avenue parking lot. That ain't gonna work either. Witherspoon-Jackson is no longer just a neighborhood. It is now the 20th Historic District in Princeton, the most diverse, most eclectic, most desirable, and fastest growing neighborhood in town. The Witherspoon Street corridor has historic significance as a vibrant retail shopping district and walking promenade, and is as integral to the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood as Nassau Street is to the central business district, especially given the neighborhood's prospects for future growth and how it relates to the overall economic development and expansion of the retail corridor. With vision and future in mind, viable businesses have selected the Witherspoon Street corridor and the neighborhood as their desired location. Many have invested their time, energy, and significant capital outlays in entrepreneurial ventures based on the desirable location, diversity, and other variables of the surrounding neighborhood and community. The livability and future financial forecast of the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood is bullish, and parking for current and potential businesses ventures will be pivotal to the success of the neighborhood as people and the businesses that choose to locate there. Why the municipality feels an obligation to assist business owners with parking assistance for employees is a question that still, in my mind, requires further discussion. But if the municipality has made a decision to do so, it should not be at the cost of negatively impacting another district, especially Witherspoon-Jackson, which is adjacent to the central business district and has retail traffic and parking needs and issues of its own. One option would be to consider parking off-site, maybe the far lot of Princeton University on Washington Road, with hourly shuttle service to Nassau Street. Businesses on Witherspoon Street, especially those in the Witherspoon-Jackson corridor between Green and Birch, should be given every opportunity to participate in the dynamic growth of the neighborhood and the town. To do so, they should be given the same opportunities as businesses on Nassau Street to gain maximum exposure and ancillary services for their customers. The parking meters should be programmed with a business format similar to that on Nassau Street. I'm going to try to wrap up quickly. Our neighborhood will not be a parking lot or dump off for Nassau Street businesses and enterprises. There are other neighborhoods in close proximity to Nassau Street, but they appear to be off limits. We must remain mindful that other neighborhoods have power and influence. Our neighborhood has unity and strength, and we show up in numbers when significantly challenges. You, our leaders, have a tough and important job. It is our responsibility to stay involved and to help you make the decisions possible that have the most possible positive impact on the greatest number of people. The fact is, you don't have all the information, and you need to hear from the community at large. We just want you to know that while the decision to move traffic or parking places to the Witherspoon Street corridor on 3 specific blocks may be the easiest solution, it is by far and most definitely not in any way the best. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate what I said at the opening. So we're not going to be able to take any action on this tonight because we have a public hearing noticed for February 11th. So we're bound by law to have the public hearing. But I think that we've heard you. I think I speak for everybody on council. Like, we've heard the issues. So
So we don't plan on going forward with the ordinance? Just to be, I don't know if that's...
we can't vote on it, but I think we've heard you. But I still, like, you're welcome to come speak. So next is Yaina Moore.
Yaina Moore, 19 Green Street. I'm very frustrated. One, I'm sick, so I'm hardly going to be able to get through this. And I'm tired of the disregard that the meeting process has essentially had with regard to including the neighborhoods in this discussion. The few meetings that were held during the parking study, which seems to have led to many of these decisions, did not really confer with any of the surrounding neighborhoods, never came to us to ask about issues of parking. We have monthly neighborhood meetings. There was never a consultant that pursued that information. So we shouldn't really be here at this point. because we have been talking about this issue of parking and the incursion that it presents to the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood for years. It actually places a negative, has a negative impact on our neighborhood, but seemingly that has no influence on the fact that our property
Yeah,
taxes...
Ines, sorry to interrupt. Can you just pull the mic a little away from you because it's hard to hear?
Okay. But our property taxes continue to increase regardless, even though this type of forced parking negatively impacts our property values and our quality of life. However, the main finding in the parking study that was conducted over, I guess, a year or so, a couple of years ago, held that the Nassau Inn, where the findings were presented, that there was a surplus, if not of parking throughout town. Now, it may not have been conveniently located to the uptown businesses, but who was going to be parking and whether it was at remote locations, of which there were many, there were opportunities to make those solutions rather than negatively impact any of the neighborhoods, in particular Witherspoon-Jackson that we're discussing today. I'm frustrated that the conclusions relied on the surrounding neighborhoods when I and others for years have talked about the incursion, the lack of monitoring of even illegal parking and overstay parking. And I don't know how many times I've actually had to call to let police know that people are parking right in front of a fire hydrant, which is, I believe, a state law. The issues of parking should not give preference to uptown businesses over our neighborhood businesses. That characteristic of the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood is particularly important because many of the businesses serve the surrounding residential neighborhood, and it's very important that there's access and ability for those businesses to thrive. There are many other issues than just parking in the uptown with regard to commercial businesses, and some of those buildings are actually being left vacant by property owners who are seeking large rents. So, I attended the preceding parking ordinance meeting, which led to many of the changes and strategies around the parking meters, and that is also not going well, despite many of the contributions that I heard from citizens that evening. I must say that I'm as concerned about the process as I am about the outcome, and I think had the process been more open, more accepting of the issues of the neighborhoods and the community as a whole, without negative impacts on any particular neighborhood, we would not be in this position today. And I think there are also considerations around having reduced the number of parking spaces uptown that are further of concern, where many have said in those locations it really was not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be having a parking update later in the agenda, and one of the things we are going to be trying to tackle this year is employee parking, and we will be doing full engagement in all of the neighborhoods that border the CBD, because everybody is impacted by this. And I think everybody can appreciate that this is not an easy problem, and that there's a lot of demand. Everybody wants to park their car, wants to have a space in front of, on their street. And I think we've definitely heard, I don't want to confuse the issue, like I think we've definitely heard that there's a problem here on Witherspoon Street because of the commercial area, but when we get to the conversation about employee parking, it is a thorny issue because there are multiple demands for the spaces that we have, and as a community, it has to be a community discussion. It's not just, I mean, ultimately, we might be voting on it, but it's something that everyone's going to have to, who has an opinion about it, is going to have to get into the trenches with us and help us figure this out, because there are a lot of competing interests, and it behooves all of us to make sure we end up with a system where everyone can get their needs basically met. And hopefully, I mean, I'm optimistic that we can figure out a solution that does that, but it is going to take some give and take. So I think you all know that, but this isn't over, and it's not going to be over at our next meeting. This is going to be multiple months of conversations, especially when it comes to the employee piece. So I hope you stay
Mayor,
engaged.
If I could just clarify, when you're talking about employee parking, we're really talking about the broader issue of permit parking, which includes parking for near neighborhoods of residents who don't have driveways. So it's the employee piece is one piece of the broader permit parking discussion.
I think that's right, yeah. Okay, next is Nancy Hodge.
Well, I appreciate that you've already considered this, and it sounds like it's not the big problem that it was. So my concern was, A, for the merchants who I do patronize on that street, but also for the neighborhood and the implications for the people, you know, if they're going to be parking then in the other places. But so that's all covered, and far more eloquently by people that have just spoken. But I then would just say how much I appreciate, especially one of the merchants, Jackie, who opened Grit and Polish, with the premise of, first of all, providing a service in a, obviously sanitized, wonderful environment, but also being fair to her employees, which in that industry is notoriously not been the case. I would just like to stress how much we appreciate that, and we need those people to want to come into this community and do that. And with this ordinance, that would be discouraging them. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Harris? And John Heilner, you're next after Daniel.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I would actually withhold my remarks until February 11th if you prefer. I have been, in fact, thrilled over the weekend to see the huge cooperation between members of council and the interested public, who are huge, and many of them are here tonight. I have every confidence that in the interests of equity and justice, this unintentionally, this part of the ordinance which is unintentionally discriminatory will be revised. We are all aware that 5 out of the 6 businesses concerned are owned and operated by non-whites. So I am sure that with this present council, those problems which currently exist in the ordinance will be rectified. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I haven't been here in a while, but great to be back. First, I'd like to just thank Mayor Lambert and Councilman Quinn and Cohn for responding so quickly over the weekend and meeting with Jackie and Brad to hear more in depth what their concerns were. I think this is what good government is all about, and I'm really encouraged to see this response. I did hear Councilman Cohn's observation somewhere over the weekend that many of the parking spots in question are seldom used. I have also observed this with my own thoroughly unscientific sample of observations, some in the early mornings, some at other times of day. But as Jackie pointed out, this really varies throughout the day. And It's really, my observations are not complete. The fact remains we must provide viable short-term parking, probably, I would think, 3 hours max for the businesses along Witherspoon Street and close to Witherspoon on the side streets. Short enough that they do not become the de facto parking lot for employees and customers of Nassau Street businesses. Yeah, this is a very complicated situation to optimize, one with limited resources, parking spaces, and high demand of various types. It actually reminds me of the very elementary linear programming course I took in grad school many, many decades ago. But oh, were this so simple. And in fact, this has much stronger real-life consequences for both the business owners and customers. I'd also like to put in a word for the day laborers who mostly gather at the Witherspoon Street bodega from early morning until as late as noon, I've found. Being a kind of a late riser myself, sometimes I'll go try to find some help at 11 or 11:30, and there are guys there wanting to work. And so by having short-term spaces, not ones that are filled from like 8 or 8:30 on by all-day parkers, this really makes it possible for potential employers, many more than myself for sure, and more frequent, to pull over, have a short conversation, and negotiate wages and hours. This is very, very important to our day laborers. And these gentlemen, they're pretty much all men, provide an invaluable service to our community and are part of the constituency who must be recognized as we search for the optimal solution. Unfortunately, under the current federal administration, they are invisible and would like to be, at least for a couple more years, but not for us as we consider this local issue. So these should be short-term parking spaces for the bodega's customers as well, as I've said. I am confident that our elected officials with staff support will listen to everyone's input and come up with the best possible solution. As I understand it, the technology inherent in our new parking meters will allow us more easily to try something than change it if it's not working correctly. However, in doing so, I think we have to err on the side of supporting our small business owners and then tweak back the other way if it's possible. I used to work in the customer service business, and I'm very aware that once a customer is lost, it's really tough to get that customer back. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
I have my pink tie on tonight because we have our Breast Cancer Resource Center dinner at the Blue Point tonight. And thank you. Jack Morrison, and I'm really pleased to hear that we've come to a good conclusion on this parking situation. Just so people know, the PMA is made up of 135 plus local businesses and organizations like Grit and Polish and B&B Studios who have invested their life savings in our community. We employ several thousand people, many of whom live right in this town and in this neighborhood. Parking is an essential part of the success of our town, and the PMA urges Mayor and Council not to be dismissive of the response of customers, the community, and business owners. While part of the planning process, let's not overly rely on theory and consultants. I have been a small business owner in Princeton for 37 years and take seriously the responsibility of providing for my employees and their families. For the better part of 30 years, members of our government would stop by our shop and ask how's business, making us feel part of the community. The simple fact that you got together with members of the businesses this weekend and listened to them is what we urge, that more feet on the street and stop by our shops and see how business is and get us engaged, because we share the same goals that you do. We want economic vitality for our community. Thank you.
Terry, 24 Dempsey. I'm very concerned about the Witherspoon Street issue, but I want to change the subject and talk about something different, if that's okay with you. I know you're all very concerned about the dinky, and I just want to bring that up. I have a short note to read from a commuter. She specializes in learning disabilities, and she's very concerned about the continuation of dinky service. Her name is Elizabeth Hamlet. And she says, I have been a regular commuter on the dinky and parking permit holder for a number of years, both for environmental and convenience reasons. Before the suspension of the dinky, my one-way commute to Upper Manhattan on a good day, when New Jersey Transit trains were not delayed, took 2 hours door to door. The replacement bus service has added another half hour to that commute, as the buses to the junction leave earlier than the train did to allow for traffic on Alexander Road. And there is a wait for the bus after my usual train back from the city, not the case when the dinky is in service. And that bus then sits in rush hour traffic going back to the dinky station. Luckily for me, I have grown children, and this extra commute time does not carry an additional child care cost, though I am sure it does for some of my fellow commuters. Having recently renewed my permit, I have just learned that dinky service will not be restored before work on Alexander Road begins. I can't imagine what traffic will look like once that happens. And given that I live on the north side of Princeton and have to cross Washington Road to get to the dinky station anyway, I won't see any point in parking there to get to Princeton Junction. I'm sure many of my fellow commuters will feel the same way and will be contributing to the traffic trying to get across Route 1, which will exacerbate an already terrible situation. It is more important than ever for the environment and for the quality of life of Princeton residents to restore the dinky service now. Respectfully, Elizabeth Hamlet. I just want to add to Elizabeth's comments. As you probably have heard, Governor Murphy has committed to reopening the Atlantic City line, but so far he has made no commitment on dinky service. At the same time, we now understand that New Jersey Transit won't restore service until at least April 1, and we have no commitment then. We also have been hearing a wide range of reasons from New Jersey Transit that keep changing. As a local resident, I'm very concerned about Princeton's economic well-being and the well-being of its commuters. I very much appreciate all the efforts that Council and our legislative delegation have been making on behalf of resuming dinky service. I strongly recommend that it is time now to take further, more visible action. We need a resumption date. And among other things, we need to know exactly what New Jersey Transit is doing to get more trained engineers in place and what more could be initiated immediately to get more engineers in place. What could they do to get more engineers? What incentives, what bonuses, et cetera. And we'd like to have the governor's backing in getting this done on a priority basis. So I know I'm talking to the choir, but I think sometimes it helps the choir to hear from a commuter that's actually stuck in the city right now doing extra work for her job. And I know you're trying hard, and I hope you can keep trying and be even more visible in punching back to New Jersey Transit that they need to do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Kip, for going above and beyond and helping to organize the commuters too and get their stories to us, because it's been helpful, I think, in letting New Jersey Transit know what's happening on the ground, even though we're not seeing, unfortunately, much action. One thing I don't know if you mentioned that's just another indignity is that there has been a 10% discount for riders during this period. The Atlantic City riders are getting 25% discount. Their discount is being extended as the shutdown continues, and apparently the dinky discount is scheduled to end on January 31st. I've made that clear that that's just, it's unconscionable and it just makes no sense. So we're hoping at least to get an immediate reversal on that. And I welcome everybody to call New Jersey Transit. We're pushing on our end. Dan Benson, who's the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, has also been a strong advocate for Princeton and the dinky. So we're trying to use all the levers that we have. But I think you're right. It comes down to, or what the New Jersey Transit will say it keeps coming down to, is their labor shortages. I keep pushing about why their labor shortage, why the dinky riders are bearing the brunt of the issues with their labor shortage. But the fact is that the way they see it, they have a big system with a lot of problems, and they see the fact that we have a bus as meaning that our train is one that's easy for them to find a substitute for. And I think the more they hear that that substitute is not a real, it's a substitute on paper, but it's not a real substitute if you're a commuter, the more helpful it is. So thank you for your advocacy, and thank you for your communication with the commuters too.
Thank you. Mayor, can I just add a quick note about, I just wanted to clarify, having just discussed with our engineer, Deanna, that actually construction on Alexander Road is not scheduled to start until the fall. So hopefully by then, by the time that construction does start, the dinky will be back in service. So hopefully we won't have that nightmare to deal with.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, then, yeah.
I wanted to make a quick comment about the parking since I won't be here on the 11th.
Okay.
And that is, I'm going to stick my head in the lion's mouth a little bit and push back against the narrative that we heard from several of the speakers. I just want to assure everybody that the decision to try to possibly address some of the employee parking need on Witherspoon Street had nothing to do with the fact that it's in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood, or that it's, that the businesses along Witherspoon are of less concern to council than any other business in town. It's really a function of the fact that there's so many unused parking spaces on Witherspoon Street. And I know there are some times of day where maybe half of them are full. There are other times of day when 2 or 3 of them are full. We're going to search for a solution where we do not cause suffering for the businesses that are there. That's clearly a top priority for us. But I think that if we can provide some employee parking, it's something that can be a benefit to the businesses on Witherspoon as well as the businesses in town. In fact, more of a benefit because the employees of those businesses won't even have as far to walk to work if they park on Witherspoon Street. So, we hear what you're saying, but I just wanted to make clear that at least in my mind, we're really trying to solve a technical problem, and we're not playing favorites between different businesses in different parts of town.
Yeah, I would just add one thing to that, and unfortunately Jack Morrison left. But one of the things I learned in talking with Jackie and Brad that I didn't realize before, you guys are a model business in so many ways, and it's great to have an environmentally minded nail salon and a place that treats their employees so well. But one of the ways that Grit and Polish treats their employees so well is that they have off-street parking that they've arranged for their employees so that there are those free spots on the street. And I think it is a real model for other businesses too, to try to make those off-street arrangements for their employees. And so I think we are going to be struggling with this as a council as to how much on-street parking should the town be devoting to employees, and how much of that is a issue that needs to be co-owned by the business owners, because certainly there are business owners who are taking on that responsibility and who are being good actors, and it's not really fair to penalize the good actors by cannibalizing those on-street spots. So again, it's a complicated issue. There are limited spaces, and we want to make use of the infrastructure that we've built as a community. So again, we're welcoming everybody's participation as we go through the complications of this and try to make sure we find a solution that works for everybody.
May I make a quick comment? And I heard Councilman Cohen, and I understand his point. I just wanted to point out that considering a lot of the historical inequities and indignities that the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood has suffered as Princeton tried to fix problems, so to speak, such as what happened regarding Palmer Square, et cetera. As much as we want to create a comprehensive solution to this parking problem, it behooves us to be sensitive to that history, because there are a lot of people here who've been around when similar promises were made about, oh, we're not picking on your neighborhood, but people have long memories of how those things were said and those assurances given, but things didn't work out that way. So just wanted to make note of that.
Thank you. Well put. Yeah, you have to come up to the mic and state your name for the record.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but after Mr. Cohn made that comment, it really
I'm sorry, you have to state your name for the record.
My name is Renee Eckstedt, and I've lived here 4 years now, coming from San Francisco, California. And my husband and I really enjoy Princeton, and we probably spend a lot of money here in Princeton. On Witherspoon, McCarter Theater, and I can't imagine somebody just saying that because you see in that neighborhood that's trying to thrive that you see some empty parking spots, so now you're going to fill it with employees. And I just find that absolutely appalling. And I can't even believe that you even said that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Okay, so I'm going to close public comment, and I realized I skipped over council announcements, so I want to go back to council announcements, and then we also have a couple folks here from the county, and so I'd like to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to move up Resolution 1949, which is a resolution recognizing the mental health stigma reduction campaign, and to put that in after we do council announcements. So, okay, is that moved?
I'll move that.
Moved by Ms. Kremiller,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Niedergang. All in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now let's go to council announcements, and I'll start on my right with Ms. Niedergang.
No announcements.
Okay, Mr. Cohen?
I do want to mention that on February 2nd, Bob Gregory is doing another program at the library to talk about the Community Emergency Response Training Program that I've mentioned in connection with the Neighborhood Buddy Initiative. So,
Wait, is that different from the Neighborhood Buddy Initiative?
Community Emergency Response Training is different than the Neighborhood Buddy Initiative. They're sort of complementary programs. One of the things we're doing for the Buddy Initiative volunteers is to offer them the emergency response training to give them confidence that they'll be prepared in the event of emergency, but it's not required. But anyway, I just wanted to make that announcement that that's Saturday morning, February 2nd, at the library, I believe in the community room.
I do have an announcement, and it may have been already announced in the past, but I think it's worth repeating that thanks to the efforts of Princeton Human Services and the Health Department, that the Mercer County Women, Infant, and Children's Clinic will continue through this year, and will also now offer expanded evening hours on Monday evenings. I also want to add that there's bilingual support available for Spanish-speaking families. The clinic is located in this building in the community room, and it takes place on the third Friday of every month from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the expanded hours are on Monday evenings they're going to start February 11th from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, I just had a couple additional announcements. So the first one is that some of you may have heard about Princeton's food waste program. There's going to be a 90-day suspension. So this Wednesday, January 30th, will be the last pickup for those who are in the compost program. But please hold on to your buckets. We are trying to see if we can bring the program back and probably restructure it in some way. But we are committed to doing everything we can to try to keep the program going. So hold on to your buckets. We're having a community meeting for those who are interested on February 6th at 7 p.m., and that will be in the community room for those who are interested. Also, our next council meeting, I was going to try to look this up so I had the right information, but I'm actually going to ask Ms. Williams, are we meeting on February 11th in Monument Hall? Do you know? Okay, so our meeting on February 11th is going to be in the Old Borough building, and that will be our annual meeting with President Chris Eisgruber from Princeton University. So you're all welcome back to that, and we'll try to send out a reminder because usually every year somebody shows up here, and it's actually in the other building, so trying to make that a memorable announcement. And are there any staff announcements? Chief Sutter?
Thanks, Mayor. One quick announcement. Our annual Walter Harris Memorial Day will be held on February 4th. That's Monday at 10:30 at Officer Harris's memorial right outside of Witherspoon Hall. The memorial of his falling was actually February 2nd, but because it's a Saturday, to make things more, to have more of an attendance, we moved it to Monday the 4th.
Any engineering announcements now? Any other staff announcements? Okay. Then we'll move on to the resolution, which is 1949, resolution recognizing the mental health stigma reduction campaign. And, oh no, I just gave away my cheat sheet with your names, but it's Terry West and then Michelle
Madu.
Oh, okay, from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. May of 2018, County Executive Brian Hughes rolled out a year-long program recognizing stigma that men and women face who are living with mental illness or addiction. And so we visited multiple municipalities, and you are the 7th. And we want to thank you so much for that. And Michelle's with me today, and she'd like to say a few words about the program that actually she brought to the county executive's attention.
Hi, everyone. Good. Hi, I'm Michelle Madu. I'm the Mercer County Mental Health Administrator that sits in the division of the Department of Human Services in Mercer County. So thank you so much for having us here tonight and for moving forward the stigma-free Mercer resolution here in Princeton. As Terry said, our county executive launched the stigma-free campaign because we're so aware that stigma functions as a barrier to help-seeking behavior, and it also functions to increase risk factors for unhealthy coping strategies. So the Stigma-Free Mercer campaign offers a variety of programs and projects and trainings to address the causes and impact of stigma, and also to promote dialogue about how we talk to and about each other, with the goal of increasing a sense of competence and confidence and dignity in help-seeking behavior for people who have mental illness. And really we're about creating a sense of unity instead of otherness that people with mental illness often suffer. So that's part of the work of the Stigma-Free campaign in Mercer County, and we're looking at engaging the youth voice and the senior voice and as many parts of every community as we can. So thank you again very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I don't want to jump on this too much, but the Youth Advisory Committee is working on stress and mental health issues, and it might be worth trying to arrange at one of their meetings for you to come in. But we've been doing a lot of work as a community, especially with the issues as they affect our high school population.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. We are working on going into the schools in every municipality and helping youth develop their own stigma-free projects. So I would love to come if that's okay.
And actually, they do have an event scheduled on January 31st, I believe. It's during the school hours. They're going to do a program on mental well-being.
Oh, great.
So if we can connect,
Okay.
I can invite you to that event.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may, something that's related to this, which I'm remiss that I didn't announce during the announcements. The Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance received an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Mercer County Municipal Alliance of the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse back on January 23rd.
That's right.
Yeah, just last week.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you wanted to do a photo op with council?
So what we often ask, if you don't mind, we have T-shirts, and on one T-shirt there's a message, while there is the logo. We're asking if you wouldn't mind holding it up, and we take a photo, and our county website usually posts a photo.
Okay, so we'll come down really quick and do that.
Great, thank you. So, Mayor, that's a message on the back if you would like to hold that one.
Sure.
And thank you. Yeah, I'll get you one. I'll get whichever you'd like to do. Okay. Everyone there? Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support.
All right. Now we come to reports, and the first report is.
Excuse me, Mayor. Are you making a?
Oh, right. Yeah. Why don't we? Thank you. Why don't we vote on the resolution? So
I'll move the
it's
resolution.
been moved by Ms. Krumiller.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you for coming. Okay. Now we come to reports, and the first report is the November 2018 police report, and I'd like to invite up the chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had two quick updates. A couple things that I've talked about here before that I wanted to get back to you on. The first thing is, as you're probably all aware, the State Attorney General issued a state directive on immigration enforcement, and it's to take effect March 15th of 2019. And I'm, in one respect, it's a very good thing because it mandates things that we've already been doing here. We're way ahead of it. We've had an order in place since 2013 that reflects a lot of the things that are in his and the Attorney General's directive. And basically it states what we've been saying for years. We are not involved in immigration matters, and that we follow state law in what we enforce and what we're trained to enforce. The issue that we're dealing with now is that the order that we wrote was a grassroots type of document that was built with members of our community for the very things that we're feeling here and dealing with here. And, quite frankly, the directive loses that personal type of touch that we had in our directive. The essence is exactly the same, but there's some things in there that I think the community liked and we liked that aren't reflected in the directive. So my plan is, I've already been in touch with Human Services. I've already got the model directive out and gotten feedback already. So we're going to, my plan is once the prosecutor will issue an interpretive document of the directive and push it out to all the police departments. And my plan is to take all that information, put our suggestions into a model directive that we want, and see if we can't add or take out. Probably adding is probably going to be easier than taking anything out of the our order that comes from that directive. I was very, very happy with our order. I think everybody was. And it just changes the wording quite substantially because we're mandated, when the Attorney General puts out the directive, we're mandated to adopt the overwhelming majority of it, but we can make things more restrictive. So that may be where we look at changing things that we may want to. But that'll be a work in progress. The other good thing of it is we've already got state-mandated training that we pushed out to all our officers, so that's a great thing. It's just more training on top of what we do already, so it just enhances, our activities in this area. The second thing was, I think I spoke to you in December when I was here. The Mercer County Vicinage, the Superior Court issued an order that mandates all traffic-related warrants of $500 and under not result in arrest. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time in Princeton. It's a heavy personnel draw, if you will. It really takes a lot of time to process these things. So there were some, it was supposed to take effect in January, and there were some process issues from the law enforcement side. So the prosecutor is working on with the court on an order, but what it'll look like is all traffic warrants from Mercer County that are for $500 or less that we encounter, there'll be a process by which we issue an order to appear on the roadside or however we encounter the person without custodial arrest. So they'll get a form with a date to appear, the court. That warrant will be what's executed in the system, so it no longer stands as a failure to appear. Not quite sure what the court's plan is to adjudicate them if they continue to be a failure to appear. But the good news is that there's a process, and I'm hoping it's going to catch on statewide. This was just from the Mercer County Court, so that means any warrant issued in Mercer County that is $500 or less and traffic related. If it's from Middlesex, the order still stands, the former process stands. So I'm sure there's going to be changes in that area, but it's something that we've talked about locally for so many years, and there's been movement on it. So I wanted to provide that update. And I can answer any questions that you might have about the November report.
Great. Are there any questions for the chief? Mr. Khan?
Just looking through the report, there was one statistic that I picked up on that seemed to be headed in the wrong direction, which was burglaries, 2018 over 17. And I just wanted to know if you thought that was sort of a random thing, or is there a trend of some kind of, gang targeting of Princeton or what?
That's a great question. So we, as all other towns and municipalities, experience these things, and they tend to be trends. So what you tend to see is, and we are aware of it, and we've been working on it for some time, you start to see them happening together and very quickly. And we've had historically, ever since I've been here, and I see it in all towns, these things, they'll spike very quickly. I think we've been experiencing, as you just brought up, some of those trends, if you will. They're most likely related. So we investigate them with all the surrounding towns. We have task force and things. We work together and share information because they're usually, what's happening here is also happening in Lawrence and Hopewell and Ewing and South Brunswick. So the good thing is that we share that information, but you're accurate. There's been an uptick.
Just following up on that, is there anything that you can elaborate on? Like, are they during the day? Are they out of people's cars? Or are they stealing cars still? Because I knew there was a thing where they were going around with that device where you can unlock the cars or something.
That's a great question. So yes, and yes. They've been residential, and we've been hit very hard in this area with vehicle burglaries and thefts. And most of them are unsecured. Open doors, open windows, open vehicles. Keys or fobs left in vehicles. So one of the best things that I don't know if you've noticed, we've been putting out some of our message boards with that information. That one of the best things you can just do is to lock your car, not leave anything of value in your visible through the windows of your vehicle, pocketbooks, wallets, money, cash. computers to secure that all in your home, lock your vehicle, and lock your doors. I would say, in my experience, an overwhelming majority of these things are related to something being unlocked or unsecured, something that you might not know or that you just never thought of before. Unfortunately, we have to think about it.
Yes, so I think I know the answer to this, but because I was asked about it, I wanted to clarify. In the parking violations, that in 2017 we had over 1,500, and this year there were 8 and in November, and I'm guessing that as when the new parking system was being implemented. But the follow-up question was, if we have an idea of what the loss in revenue was.
So the way, as for the reason would be that that's one thing. There's a transition. We also lost a parking officer, and there was so we were down one whole officer for a bit as we recruited. I think that was probably one of the major things between 2017 and 18. I really can't answer the revenue issue. We basically, from the police department standpoint, while we monitor these things and look at the averages, I don't know anything about the revenue portion.
Okay. And another one that stood out to me is not that big of a difference, but that on the false alarms, 2017 there were none, and this year there were 20 in November. Is that something that wasn't being enforced before and is now?
I'm going to have to look at that and get back. I can research that very specifically and let you know, and okay. I'll get back to you on that.
And if it is being enforced,
they were being enforced in 17 too, so I'm not wondering if that's not a clerical issue I have to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make mention that an equity question that always comes up is, when you have things like fines and penalties from police action, some people rightfully get upset when the question of revenues, and nothing against what you asked, Councilwoman Fraga. I think it's a good question, but the issue comes up, we have to be careful that we don't see penalties as a form of helping to fill the municipal coffers, because then it certainly leaves a bad taste in the mouth of people, where it appears that laws are being enforced as a way to generate municipal revenue. Just wanted to point out that that's always a concern whenever that issue comes up.
I had a question for the chief. So you were not here at our last meeting, but our last meeting was right after we had the protests, and we're unfortunately making national news. So can you just talk about if there were lessons learned from that experience, or if the police department has done sort of a postmortem on it, and just your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Great. I should have provided this to you at the beginning. We did an internal review days after, and we were very, very happy in many ways about the way it worked out, and it was a best case scenario in terms of the police response and how peaceful everything was. We learned a lot, especially our interactions with our partners in law enforcement and fire and EMS. So our next move is to, just spoke with Bob Gregory today, is to get the larger group together now. We wanted to look at it just from the police department standpoint. We did implement for the first time the new Mercer County Rapid Response Team. And that was a way basically that all the police departments in the county, under the supervision of the prosecutor, when we have an emergency or a planned event like this, every department gets together and donates, if you will, personnel or equipment or resource that we have to the event. And we work together and we train together. We've been training for over a year, so that all our communications, this is really a regional approach to these issues and shares resources, and it's really a good thing. And that was the first time it was ever used, and the communications piece as well. So it worked out. It was a great, in the end, ability for us to test our response, and we did learn a lot. And I'll have a document put together on the whole thing once we meet with our county and regional partners.
Great. Yeah, and I want to thank the department too for your response and for being so on top of it.
Thank
I
you.
know that was there were a lot of unknowns heading into that day.
Very true.
And we're just very thankful about all your efforts in being organized, and I think that probably actually had an effect on the ultimate outcome of it too.
Yes, I hope so.
We appreciate your work on that. All right.
Mayor, I
any
just
last
had a quick
questions
question
for the chief?
So thank you for the very thorough report. Looking through it, I noticed that with the exception of the first couple of months of the year, that arrests are down noticeably from the previous year, but the UCR report, which I now know what it means, thank you very much, United Crime Report, Unified Crime Report, and service calls are up. And I'm curious, that seems like almost an inverse relationship, and I wonder, is it a deliberate decision to do fewer arrests? Can I draw no conclusions from this?
I would hesitate on drawing any really deliberate conclusion. I think that's one of the things about UCR, and I'm being critical, but it doesn't paint an accurate picture of policing crime, disorder, and quality of life in a given community. And that's why you see things, you see UCR going one way and everything else sometimes going another, and you can't really put things together. It's because UCR is really just a benchmarking for crime so that it can be compared across states that have different laws. We're moving to we got a grant, and we're one of the, I think, 12 municipalities in New Jersey that will be testing the new national incident. It's called NIBRS, the acronym, and it's a new way of UCR, it's a new way of reporting nationally to the FBI. And this is going to be a more specific picture of the local picture. It's going to take all these things that you mentioned, arrests, and all these other things that UCR does not take into effect and report it more comprehensively. So, and to answer your question directly about arrests, those things it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily show a picture of that we're doing less or doing more. It's really lots of times happenstance of the things that officers are involved in, the types of calls we're getting for that month. So I don't see it as a trend. It kind of varies.
Mayor, I have a hybrid comment, and this goes back to the what we thought was going to be the white supremacist march. I have not had a chance to really investigate this as much as I would have liked to, but I was just thinking, I'm sort of like thinking out loudly, but something I think the municipality needs to consider, considering the cost of mobilizing extra police, et cetera. We're talking about bringing in the Mercer County Rapid Reaction Force. I was wondering, and I'm sort of putting on my attorney hat here, if there's a cause of action against a known organization who, I understand they have First Amendment rights to march, et cetera, but to come out and say we're pranking a community, knowing that there's the necessary result of this sort of mobilization and a significant cost to communities. And I'm wondering, if if folks are allowed to get away with this, then we have no deterrence going into the future of them doing the same thing here and in other communities. And so I guess in there there's a First Amendment question, but I also think there is an intentional tort, when organizations come out and do these, knowing that reasonably we have to have a certain reaction, because it behooves us to have this reaction to it. We don't want to have them say they're coming and the police force does nothing differently, and then we have some chaos when it does happen. So the hybrid comment, and it may be, not to put our municipal attorney on the spot, but I guess people can see where I'm going. Is I wonder if there is a cause of action somewhere in there. Cause of action, of course, a reason for a lawsuit in there to deter organizations from pranking towns, since apparently one of their leaders put out the statement that it was only a prank, where it's not just an exercise of First Amendment rights. This is intentionally doing something that's costing our town and surrounding communities money.
I could just say real quick that it is something that we have contemplated in our after action, but we were going to make a phone call. So this is better.
So I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking about this, right?
I have some thoughts that we can discuss offline.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Thanks. Well, it's being considered, which I think is good.
But thank you, Dwayne. I think we all share your feeling of, well,
Yeah.
that would be great if we could do that.
Exactly. All right. Are there any other questions for the chief? All right. Thank you, chief. And then next is our parking system update, and I wanted to turn it over to Deanna Stockton, our municipal engineer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking over at Mark DeShield in case, does administration want to start off with anything, or I'll jump in? Okay, thank you. Since our last meeting with council on parking, we've made some additional progress and headway with our system. Access Princeton has consolidated all of the parking documents related to the public meetings, the various communications and other reports onto the municipal website. There's a dedicated page with all of that information now. They are continuing to support with our customer service and communications progress as well. Access Princeton additionally is gathering information to be able to hold a couple of trainings later this spring. Public Works has been installing the pay station signs. That was a little bit delayed to get the pay here signage in, but that is now underway as of today. We're also working with PSC&G to look at some of the lighting concerns that were voiced. We're doing it as a very slow, methodical way. First, we looked at 2 of the public parking lots that were of concern. That was the Park Place West lot and the Tulane lot. We've met and come up with solutions for lighting for both of those lots, and it's just now a matter of time of getting materials and getting installation done. Additionally, we have worked with PSC&G to update some of the lighting on Paul Robeson. That stretch of the roadway from Chambers to Witherspoon Street is quite dark. You have lighting on the residences side, and the street lighting provided by PSC&G on the north side of the road is quite dim. So we are working with them actually to pilot LED lighting. LED lighting is now available through PSC&G, and we are going to replace some of the existing lighting fixtures with LED lighting fixtures, and then add one more fixture in where one does not exist. So that gives us an opportunity to test out the new offering of LED lights, as well as updating and upgrading some of the lighting in that location. So we'll see how that works out, how that, because LED lighting is a little bit different from our standard induction lighting that's out there. We really want to take a look at what impact it has before we move forward in implementing changes elsewhere. At the last meeting, there was a discussion about looking at a reduced rate for the first hour of parking, especially where we had the 2-hour parking, versus a grace period. So we are looking at the cost impact of that right now, and hope to have some information to bring back to council possibly at the next meeting. We did have a situation last week, just so you're aware of, especially looking at this week's weather forecast. We had some meters that froze downtown, and that, while it's was unanticipated with these new meters, it's something that we had experienced in the past with the old meters. And so in that case, what happened is that the meters just were not responding because of the LED crystals. The screens just were not refreshing. So that could occur again this week, but again, it's not uncommon, and we experienced this in the past with the old meters. Couple other updates. We will be doing some occupancy counts on the parking system in February and March. Since the ordinance for Witherspoon Street does not look like it's moving ahead, we can do some of those occupancy counts earlier than waiting until March. So we'll be looking at that to see where we're at on our, if we're hitting that 85% occupancy target that is set for the system. And then what we're looking to do is report back on that information in April with council. I understand that we're looking to do a special parking meeting sometime in April, either the 15th or the 19th. And so once that date is set, we'll have information available. Engineering and administrative staff tomorrow are going to be starting a process of collecting downtown business email addresses. We've worked with the health department to use some of their tablets to be able to collect this data, and it will be used both for our emergency notification system as well as a database for us to use as we move ahead with these conversations about loading zones and parking. And then the last update is with wayfinding. We are starting a process to look at the wayfinding for parking around town as you come in from some of those major roads like Route 1 and 206 to make sure we have proper wayfinding signage in place. Okay.
Great, thanks. And I just wanted to clarify one thing you said with like a little bit of a nudge towards my colleagues. So we are trying to set up a parking meeting. Everybody received a doodle request, and the dates are either April 15th or 29th. So if you haven't responded, please go back through your emails and respond, because as soon as we hear from everybody, then we can schedule the meeting and let the public know. But maybe there's only 1 or 2 people who haven't responded, so make sure it's not you. You know who you are.
I had a question. Can I? Yeah. So you just mentioned collection of data for businesses, and I think it's mainly information that, if I understand correctly. Could we also get data on number of employees and where they may be parking? Is that possible?
Yes, I'm trying to think about it. That was in one of our versions of the seamless document that we're using. We had requested that to see. I think we are including it number of part-time employees as well as number of full-time employees. Okay. I decided to delete the question about where people are parking at this time, but I have reached out to the PMA as well to see if we can have some of the information that they gathered through their parking survey, okay, which talks about employee parking. Okay. And hopefully we can work between the two systems to gather that okay. data.
Because I would like to think that some employees may be local residents that don't require parking, or some that are using public transit. So like to differentiate somehow that question.
And just one question, Deanna, and thank you for that thorough report and for all the work that you're doing post-installation to get the system operating properly. The question about the poles that were left over after the installation of spaces that became pay station spaces. So some of those poles will have signage directing people to the pay stations. And my understanding from discussions at PBAC in December was that we're looking to possibly repurpose some of those poles as bike parking. Is that correct? And some are just being removed outright. So what's the status of all 3 pieces of that?
So the first step with the signage, we needed to get in the signs that say pay here for the pay stations. Our next step is with that in place, we'll be looking at all the overall signage to see if we need to supplement it with signs that direct you, you know, like with a right or a left arrow down to a pay station. And so if we do need to supplement in certain blocks, those meter pole areas will allow us to supplement. Regarding the retrofit of the meter poles for bike parking, we have a recommendation from the Bike Advisory Committee that I will be bringing to our next Public Works Committee meeting to review as to the locations that are recommended for those retrofits. And I think there was a third part that I missed.
The status of the removal of poles that will not be utilized for bike parking or for possible signage.
Correct. So once we determine which poles we can retrofit for bike parking, then we can work with Public Works to schedule the removal of some of the poles. In Park Place West lot, it is a little more challenging just because they are between the parking stalls, embedded in concrete and asphalt. So some of those may take a little bit more time to get removed, but most of those on-street locations are much easier to remove, and we'll get those scheduled soon.
Thank you. Thank you again for all your work on this.
Are there any other questions for Deanna? No. Can you go back? I might have just missed it about the LEDs and what the timing would be for that.
Well, it's subject to PSE&G's work load, but typically it's a 4 to 6 week turnaround to get those new lights in place.
Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to add my thanks to Mr. Quinn's too. This has been an enormous project, so we thank you. You probably know more about parking than you ever wanted to know, so, and then some. All right. So now we'll move on to council reports, and I'll start on my right with Ms. Niedergang. Any reports for tonight?
Yes. Let me find it. In a general sense, Mr. Williamson and I attended the League of Municipalities training for new officials this weekend and learned a lot about the roles of various municipal officials as well as what not to do on email. So that's something we'll be keeping in mind. This will come up a bit later in the meeting, but following up on a letter that Shade Tree Chair Sharon Ainsworth wrote with Mayor Lempert, considering a bill that will allow utilities to do a lot of clear cutting along their right-of-way. The concern was raised on Shade Tree that although this issue is going to be up before the state Senate later this week, that probably not a lot is going to get done there. We remain hopeful, but that contacting Governor Murphy at this point to urge him to conditionally veto the bill is the next step in action. So I wanted to relay that. Both Princeton Environmental Commission and Shade Tree commented on the Lenwin development plan that will be coming before the planning board in the coming weeks. There was a lot of concern about stormwater runoff and tree removal, and both commissions sent substantive comments onto staff and hopefully onto the planning board. And then a brief note about from the health department that the deer management program will be on municipal lands will be starting in February. There's been ongoing deer management on the Butler tract as well. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Cohen, any reports?
I think I'll pass.
I don't have any reports. I think I said all I needed to say already. Are there any staff reports?
Yes, I have a couple. Cherry Valley Road construction work continues despite the weather and the cold. We're working on storm sewer in the section near Birchwood, which is a Montgomery Township road. As many can see across the street, the PFAR's construction is continuing, as well as the municipal fuel station installation. We're anticipating that it will be in operation in mid-February. We did install a temporary fueling station over by the Recreation Department in the Witherspoon lot, but that will be removed as soon as our fuel station is up and running at Mount Lucas and Cherry Hill Road. Last week, we also had the first stakeholder meeting for the Hamilton-Wiggins-Paul Robeson corridor study. If you recall, this is a complete streets corridor study that came as a result of the Beta Bike Lane project. This corridor had been included in the master plan for a study, and so with the success of what we saw on the Beta Bike Lane, we advanced that study with WSP, and we had the first meeting on Thursday night with advocates. We're looking to schedule 2 more stakeholder meetings, one of which will be with our business community. We're looking at having that meeting in the first couple of weeks of February during the workday, unless we get feedback from businesses that there is a better time for them. And then we're also looking to host a stakeholder meeting with the residents who live along that corridor. So all of the property owners will be handing out notices to those property owners and looking to schedule a meeting on a Saturday morning to host them to discuss what their needs and concerns for the corridor are. And then after that, WSP will continue to gather data, and later in the spring they'll come to council and submit a report or recommendation of complete street improvements. And just for some background, well, some of the impetus for the study was from the Beta Bike Lane. They are looking at the corridor for all of its uses. So they're looking at it for pedestrian, bicycle, vehicular, bus transportation through the corridor. We're looking at intersections and safety, the crash data, to see what will make it the best operating system that it can be, especially considering it's a residential area close to downtown, but also very close to our schools. So stay tuned for more information for that. And last update is on the Alexander Street work. While Eve had mentioned that the actual construction for the bridges on Alexander Street will not start until the fall, we do have advanced utility work that is ongoing. PSE&G has been out working to relocate utility poles and their lines. They've had some delays, and they are now working 7 days a week to advance their work. Right now, the closures are from 9 to 3, and it's a 1-lane closure, so it's alternating traffic. But beginning February 25th, they would be looking to have full closure from 9 to 3 each day in order to complete the work, and that would take another month as well. So that would be until the end of March. That's it.
Great, thank you. Any other staff reports? There was one report that I had that I forgot to mention about one of our goals this year is better communications. So I want to report on sort of like 3 efforts with the communication. So first is there's been a newsletter group, which consists of myself, Councilman Quinn, and Councilwoman Niedergang. And so if you subscribe to the weekly newsletter, online newsletter, you've probably noticed there's been some changes to that. So we want to hear your feedback. And one of the new features of that is a Council Corner column. So if there's, I just wanted to open it up and let people know we're always looking for good Council Corner column material. So if you're interested in writing something, let any of us know. And then if people are interested in signing up for it, there's a link up on the website. Also, I've circulated a draft notice that will go out to candidates when they file about lawn signs. So if everybody wants to just take a final look at that and get comments in, but I'm hoping to have that ready because I think the filing period starts in the next couple months. So we want to have that ready for when candidates come in. And then finally, we had said we were going to work on the boards, committees, and commissions handbook. And so I'm hoping everybody can take a look at that before the end of this month. And maybe something where you can share it with the chairs too, just to take another read through in terms of things that either aren't clear or issues that have come up on boards and committees that they've had questions about that are maybe general that would be worth addressing in that handbook. So if everybody can do that, that'd be great. Okay. Now we will move on to correspondence, and I'm sorry, I'm just seeing this here as a reminder. So I'd like to invite up Jamie. You sat in the back. If you sat in the front and were tapping your foot, I would have had you up sooner. I'm sorry. So it's Jamie Volkert from Palmer Square to talk about your calendar for 2019.
The light's actually off. The light's off. Is the battery dead or something?
Now can you hear me? Okay. So in 2018, we increased the event frequency by quite a lot. We had a lot of large events, at least one per month, many rotating events on weekly basis, and they were smaller events. We worked with a lot of community partners to bring them in, get them exposure, do some fundraisers. Main goal was just to keep active, keep the square energized, and keep people coming to town. Unfortunately, now in this day and age, we got to do a song and dance to get people, in the streets and filling the stores. So in 2019, we don't have too many additional events because we did put quite a few on last year, but we tweaked the calendar and we tweaked the events we did to better help all of the tenants in the square, and we took into account the feedback we got because we do put out surveys. So if you look, the first event we have is actually in a week and a half. It's the Palmer Square on Ice event. It's been successful the past 2 years. One of the things that we've noticed from a lot of the tenant feedback was that they would like to see weekend-long events. So instead of just bringing in ice carvings and doing it as a one-day event, come see the ice carvings, spending a lot of money and having them, see them for 2 minutes and go home, we made a weekend-long event out of it. We have the Princeton Tiger Tones coming over to sing a cappella music for both days on Saturday and Sunday. We have Westminster Conservatory of Music coming in. They're bringing their cello group, and they're going to play some music. We're going to stretch out the carvings to be in different areas, so it's not just on the green. Instead of providing complimentary hot chocolate on the green, we're going to have people go in the stores to warm up, and all the stores are going to host things to try and get them shopping as well. And then we have caricatures. We have Valentine's Day crafts in Cranberry Station Gallery. So trying to just mix things in instead of just doing one thing to get people here, also trying to get them to shop. Last year, the egg hunt went over very well, so we're going to do that again. There's not too many changes to that, but all the prizes, they can get, their golden goose egg and cash it in the stores. So to get the big prizes, they go into the stores. We did the Mamma Mia Princess shopping spree last year. People loved it. We had 450 children show up with their families. The only thing was it didn't include too many boys, so this year we're going to do the shopping spree with princesses and superheroes, and instead of hiring actors, we make a large donation to the Sunshine Foundation of Mercer County. They bring in all the superheroes and princesses. Girls' Night Out, we changed it a little bit last year. It worked very well. We kept everything outside instead of having a VIP lounge in the hotel, kept everything outside, and then we also did the hospitality type things in the store. I actually had people come up to me and say, wow, I actually went in the stores this year. And in the beginning of the night, they said to me, well, where's all the free food? So at the end of the night, they were excited that they found them in the stores. They got shopping. And that was a very odd day because we had fires and floods and, ambulance there and fire trucks, and it was like the band played on. Nobody even knew the difference. People were shopping and having a great time. So this summer we have a lot of reoccurring events. We have music on the weekends. We have we added Thursday nights strolling entertainment just to keep us lively. That's the one night a week that, besides Friday, where we're open late. So we had anything from jugglers to musicians to 4th of July, we had Uncle Sam on stilts walking around. Just different things just to keep it entertaining. We also put out, I don't know if anybody noticed, we also put out picnic tables and lawn games, and we played some music, and that seemed to get a lot of people interested on hanging out on the green. We also added, or we changed up Jazz Feast, and we kind of did that mid-year. We were noticing a lot of the tenant response was that they weren't seeing any of these people throughout the year. A lot of people had come year over year for the Jazz Festival, but then they never come back. So we changed it up and we brought in different types of music, so we got a different crowd in. We had everything. We started off with jazz so we could still keep some of the jazz folks entertained. We brought in Irish music, we had rock music, we had all different types. We hope to do that again. We're looking for entertainment. We want to do all new bands, so we keep it fresh. It was overall successful. The crowd was about the same size as the previous year, but this time there was a lot of families. You saw it was definitely more family friendly. The one complaint I got was that they came here for exquisite jazz music, and instead they saw a street fair and there was actually kids on the street. So to me that wasn't really a terrible complaint or a bad thing. So we're working on evolving that event a little bit more as well. And in October we started Fall Festival a couple years ago, and while it's been wildly successful, there's been a lot of people out enjoying it. It's very similar to Music Fest. So this year we're looking to do what we're calling Glam Fest. It's similar to like a BeautyCon event that you've seen around the country. We'll start off on Saturday night. We'll kick it off with a girls' night out type of event. And then on Sunday, we'll bring in some influencers, and we'll do makeovers and fashion shows and all kinds of fun things. I'm looking to pull in the different tenants and start a planning committee so they can all help have input. Some of them have called in for their corporate influencers from around the world, so we're hoping that'll be a fun event to put on the map. And then we have all the holiday festivities, which, they're growing. So this year our tree lighting, we put sound out on Nassau Street. We mic'd the choir down by the tree. And then it was probably the coldest day we've had in a long time for tree lighting. So we probably didn't need all those mics, but it went over well. The menorah lighting we changed up a little bit this year, and it had a much larger crowd. It was kept outside. So, we're keeping all the holiday traditions, but just trying to tweak them to go with everything.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ms. Krummeler?
And I want to say thank you so much for doing all of this. What you do for Palmer Square, you also do for the town, and really makes a nice town center for us. And I just have a little request, because we're Princeton, that can you make some female superheroes with the princess and superhero shopping spree? Can you make sure there's some female? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, we will include everybody. I had one dad come last year, and he was like, I couldn't pass it up. So it was the mom and me shopping spree. Well, this year, but he was cute because he brought his two kids, and one of them was a boy and one was a girl, and he's like, are dads allowed? But yes, we'll definitely have a female superhero.
And if we're making requests, I don't know if the summer movie series have been selected yet.
No, we haven't picked them yet.
Oh, can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Well, if one of them could be that's a cultural inclusive movie,
okay.
And I think a great one would be Coco, that I think many in our community would love to see, and I just would love to see it.
Movie. So that's
yes.
that's a.
Yeah. As far as community building, I don't see many members of our Latino community when we have gone to those summer movie events, and that's something that we could help promote.
No, that's great.
If we could make that happen. Thank you.
Great.
I will make that happen.
Just one thing, thank you for everything, and one event that I know is not a Palmer Square event, but happens on Palmer Square is the Christmas Eve caroling, which is a wonderful community event that the Arts Council puts on with the cooperation of the Nassau Inn on the square, and if anyone has never been, it's really wonderful on Christmas Eve, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Also under correspondence, we have the letter to Senator Bateman on the Vegetation Management Response Act, but Ms. Niedergang already gave the report on that, which is great. But this is a huge concern to Princeton and other communities in New Jersey who care about trees, which I think are probably most communities. So we're hoping to help raise awareness about this in other communities too, because it is such a serious issue.
Thank you for writing that letter.
Yeah, well, Sharon deserves
I
all
think
the credit
we all
for it. Yeah.
are very much. I mean, I'm behind it. It's just a horrible thing.
Yeah, and I sometimes these things, like these bills, sit around forever and then they suddenly pick up steam, and so that's why we didn't have time to bring it to council as a resolution
thing.
But I figured it was good to try to go on the record and say something from Princeton. All right, next we come to our ordinance introduction for this evening, which is 2019-5, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton abolishing the Complete Streets Committee, renaming the Public Transit Advisory Committee as the Freebie Advisory Committee, and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. And just by way of background, I wanted to turn it over to Ms. Krummeler and also Ms. Niedergang about why this is on here, and I think there might be some suggested changes too.
Right. I think Eve has a minor suggested change, but this was really in a reaction to how the committees were working, and the ad hoc groups of the Complete Streets Committee are actually, we found, a really good way to get things done and be efficient about our work and not have a committee that sometimes there are members who don't have a purpose or don't feel a purpose. And now, so anyway, we're concentrating the ad hoc committees. I mean, we're going to put those under the council rather than having an extra layer of the Complete Streets Committee. So I think it seems to me like it's going to be even better. I think it was great. The committees that we had did some really great work. I see Surinder's here, and he did some work on one of them. And Tinica has done some work also. So I think it's a good change, and I'm looking forward to it. But I think Eve has a small, minor correction.
Yes, after a conversation with one of the members of the Public Transit Advisory Committee, we'd like to delay introducing that part of the ordinance and temporarily at least keep it as public transit. There was concern that if we can reconstruct this as solely concerned with the freebie, that the public will lose a forum to come to address issues possibly relating to the dinky, to suburban transit, and that a broader outlook on transit in the community might be lost. So for now, I'd put in the request to withdraw Section 2, which renames the Public Transit Committee as the Freebie Committee, and to give us a little time to see if we can get the committee up and running again and effective in its current format.
I think I failed to notify one of the people, and I feel really bad, on the Public Transit Committee about this, and I gave a list of emails and I left his out accidentally, but everyone on the Complete Streets Committee now has a different home. It's not like we've fired anybody from the committees or, pushed anyone out. So everyone who was working is now, I hope, working even more purposefully.
I'd just like to voice my support for the change that Ms. Niedergang was proposing. As in my role as liaison to the Climate Action Plan Steering Committee, there's a lot of conversation in the Land Use and Transportation Task Force about coordinating the different bus services, whether it be Tiger Transit, New Jersey Transit, Freebie, shuttles from the Institute and the seminary. And so I think that there can be a much bigger role as the Climate Action Plan comes into force, is adopted and comes into force, with working on those kinds of coordination issues between the different transit and having a unified transit system in town.
Well, one of the committees that has been appointed and now is going to be made official under this new structure is a public transit communications. I forget the exact title, but that's exactly what they're going to be working on, because that is I think everyone recognizes that's a goal. So there is a committee, and so we definitely should make sure the Climate Action Plan people are kept abreast of what that committee's doing.
Okay. So is that what
I'd like
you've
to
recommended
introduce-
is like a friendly amendment to this then? Do you want to introduce it with the Section 2 removed?
I'll introduce it with Section 2 removed.
Or the changes to Section, how do we want to phrase that with the?
No, you would be, you're deleting Section 2 from the ordinance. We're also going to have to reword the title.
Okay, so then should we just hold this then? And is it something we can do tonight, or should we wait and do it at the next meeting?
I can, let me just see if there's
Do you-
anything else that this does. Sorry, because there's also a section in here dealing with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I just want to see what it's.
My recommendation is let's hold it for now
Yeah.
and let's not introduce it. Let's go through the rest of the agenda, and if Trishka's ready for us to introduce it, we can do it at the end. Is that okay?
Right, but
and if not, we'll wait for
But
and
all
do it
the
on the
committees
11th.
are all moving forward, so it's not. So this is more making it official, so it's not going to be delaying anything.
And it's advisory too, so it's not going to cause an issue to wait a little more. Okay, so in that case, let's move on to resolutions, and then we'll come back if we're able to with the ordinance
Do we need a
introduction.
motion to change the agenda if we do that? I'm just wondering.
Is that easier for you to change the agenda? Is it easier for us to amend the agenda to move the discussion of the ordinance to the end? All right, so I take that as a motion from Mr. Williamson to amend the agenda to put the ordinance introduction at the very end of the meeting. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Cohen. All in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Okay, great. So next we'll move on to resolution. So 19-38, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing the modification of the Transportation Committee restructuring. And maybe this one we also hold until hold until the next meeting, because that also mentions the renaming of the Transit Committee. So let's just hold that one. Next is 1939, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with, is that one H or
IH?
IH Engineers PC for professional traffic engineering consulting services for the purpose of reviewing development applications on behalf of Princeton's land use boards for 2019 in an amount not to exceed $15,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Kremiller.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1940, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with WSP USA in an amount not to exceed $69,858.50 for Route 206 corridor assessment study related to the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad closure of Terhune Road at US Route 206. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Kremiller, seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any comments or questions on this, Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I just want to give Ms. Stockton an opportunity to talk about this a little, because I was confused by it, how you do a study of the impact of closing Terhune Road after it's already been closed. And she explained it to me. I want her to explain it to everybody else too.
Sure. Back in 2014, we had a consultant complete a traffic study for us. It was a traffic signal warrant analysis. At the time, they had 2014 data regarding the traffic counts in the area. They had projected forward with some more information as to developments with PFARs, as well as when the data had been collected, we were in that flux between the hospital and the Avalon development. So they had projected the Avalon traffic impacts as well in that report. At the time, it came up with recommendations for traffic improvements that were needed. Now we are almost, 4 or 5 years later, and with the actual closure of Terhune, which has to happen, it's been approved to happen for the PFARS development, we can now go forward with a new traffic study, get new data on the traffic counts, so that in one way it's a double check against what data we had presumed in the 2014 study, but it will give us now the current data, which we can then build a model to try out new scenarios, what changes could be made, considering that Terhune Road is closed currently, and see what changes need to happen. And we can also use that if we want to say that the 5-6 school comes into play at the Valley Road site for the school district as well. So getting this new data actually helps us in a lot of ways have a better predictive model for what's going to be occurring.
Will there also be level of service information, not just traffic counts, I assume?
Correct, yes. We have that from the traffic warrant analysis study back in 2014, and we can use that to compare what the data will be with this closure of Terhune Road and then with changes.
And I guess the last question is, if DOT is not happy with the recommendations of this study, I guess I would hope that there would be some recommendations that we could implement without DOT's buy-in necessarily.
Right. So the way this study will be put together is we've asked WSP to come with some quick solutions for us. It's only been 4 days since the closure of Terhune. There has been increase of backups and queues. We know that. There will be a period of adjustment time for people, but in general, by losing that one outlet to 206, we expect that there will be additional traffic. And so what we've asked WSP is to look at, are there striping changes perhaps that we can make on our own municipal roadways? Is there an opportunity, while it still needs DOT approval, but could we look at, say, opening up the left turn on Valley again to 206? That's a much quicker turnaround time than, approval for a traffic signal. So we're looking at it first for those quick fixes, whether it's on our municipal roadways or short interactions with DOT, and then the long-term conceptualizing of improvements. Is it going to be new traffic signals? Is it retiming traffic signals? What are we doing at the Cherry Hill Road intersection? So that's all part of the study.
Can I just ask what constitutes a quick fix? Because I'm learning that what I think of as a quick fix is probably very different than what you think of as a quick fix. So what would your timeline be for that? Thank you.
For me, what I see as a quick fix is paint striping. That's really a big
I meant
quick
actually
fix.
in terms of like timeline. Like once you identify a problem, is it a few days, a few weeks, a few months? What's the time?
Paint striping, theoretically, we could have within a month.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
A left turn approval from DOT, that's probably more like 3 months at the earliest.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like the left turn on Valley is something that everyone agrees that we'd like. Is that true? I mean, because we were planning on doing that, so maybe we should try move ahead with doing that? Or is this getting ahead of ourselves?
Well, it's safer typically with a traffic signal. So if you're trying to implement it as a stop intersection on the state highway, to replicate, say, what we have on Terhune Road.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is I understand that it's not ideal, and I never liked using it, and myself, I always would go up to the light. But since it has been used without serious consequence that I know of,
it's complicated by the fact that we only have 3 lanes on Valley. Right now there are 2 coming into town and 1 leaving for the right turn. And if you combine people trying to make lefts and rights onto 206 in 1 lane, I think that would be a major holdup. If you wanted to try and have 1 lane coming into town and 2 lanes going out, then you would have problems with people backing up at the light at Witherspoon Street, because right now you've got a sort of a left turn lane and a straight lane,
But it also comes in at a different point in the curvature of the road, and so we really need to look at sight distances. Where it is on Terhune, it's close enough in some respects to the traffic signal at Cherry Hill that you had some built-in brakes in the traffic, where because you're getting further away from that traffic signal, the volume or the speeds are increasing. You've got slightly different conditions, even though it's only a couple hundred feet apart.
I guess I can see you're right. Yeah, I can see that.
So we really need to take a look at that and be able to prove that it's safe for the state to consider approving that.
Great. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Stockton on this, or comments or concerns? Okay. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1941, resolution authorizing professional services agreement with Bowman Consulting Group, Limited, for an amount not to exceed $25,000 for a topographical and location survey for Community Park South. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Fraga. Any comments or questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh.
No, I said aye.
Oh, aye, okay. Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1942, resolution authorizing the extension of the existing contract with Tom L. Wells Electrical Contractor Incorporated for electrical services, various locations within the municipality of Princeton for 1 year, 2019, in an amount not to exceed $150,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1943, professional services agreement for McManaman, Scotland, and Bauman to serve as 2019 bond counsel and not to exceed $50,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1944, professional service agreement for Hodilic, how do you pronounce this? Hodilic, thank you. And Morrison, PA, for purposes of preparing an annual audit and related financial services on behalf of Princeton in an amount not to exceed $52,000. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'm going to say that was moved by Mr. Quinn and seconded by Mr. Cohen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1945, resolution authorizing a services contract with R&D Consulting LLC for information technology support not to exceed $34,320. Is there a
I'll
motion?
move that. Oh, sorry. I'll move that.
Okay.
Sorry. I got ahead of you.
Moved by Ms. Fraga. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So, Mr. DeShield, this is for temporary head of IT while we find someone to
We
an
currently
internal
have
IT?
advertisement. We currently have an advertisement out for another IT specialist. This is the measure to take care of that vacancy in the interim.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And next we come to the consent agenda. We already moved 1949. But is there a motion to approve the other items?
So moved.
So it's been moved by Mr. Cohen.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Kremler. I'm assuming nobody wanted any of the items removed. Normally ask that. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The consent agenda passed. And now I will turn to, yeah. Now I'm going to turn to Trishka to see, are we ready with the?
Yeah, I have a revised title for you to reflect the changes. So the title would now read, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton abolishing the Complete Streets Committee, modifying the membership of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. And then in the body of the ordinance, the revisions would be to delete Section 2 altogether and then renumber the remaining sections of the ordinance accordingly.
Okay. Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance as so described?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Niedergang and seconded by Ms. Kremler.
Public comment?
Oh, and I'd like to invite whoever would like to speak on this to come up to the microphone. I just don't know if the mic is on. Could you see if there's a button there? There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to make a general comment about transportation policy in Princeton. And I do it in the following sense. I am immensely grateful what you have done to Princeton, and I'm particularly grateful that you have put us on a path to reduce our carbon emissions. So what follows is just me egging you on. My name is Tina Castillo. I live on 79 Dempsey Avenue. As you know, transportation accounts for about a third of Princeton's carbon emissions. You and I are contributing to the global climate crisis, which is already affecting our lives here in Princeton today. Last month, at the UN Climate Conference, Greta Thunberg, the 15-year-old Swedish activist, said, I quote, "We cannot solve this crisis without treating it like a crisis. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope," unquote. Like Greta, I am given 3 minutes, and like her words, mine may make you uncomfortable. I am here to tell you that the science says that we need to cut our emissions by half within the next 10 to 12 years. This is Princeton, so I have references in my... This is where this council comes in. You can shape what is politically possible. For instance, thank you for the bicycle mobility plan. Yes, I've heard about Teslas, I've heard about self-driving cars and Uber. They're all very nice, but they increase congestion and they decrease social equity. And here my questions to you begin. Does this count? I read this to the Complete Streets Committee, but now you have taken on its role, so I will read it to you. Does this council have the will and the courage to put in place bold, low-carbon, high-equity transportation policies at the timescale required? Will you honor and protect the people who are already actively cutting the town's transportation emissions by walking and biking? Will you adopt a Vision Zero policy for Princeton? Will you have the will and the courage to put our lives, my life, before the convenience and the speed and the throughput of car drivers? And I'm sorry to be the one to remind you, if the car-centric are not shouting at you, you are not doing it, you are not doing enough fast enough. Will you put social equity at the center of your transportation policy? For instance, will you appoint committee members who go about our town without a car by necessity rather than by choice? Will you pursue public transport that is effective? And I'll say this again, hourly bus service is lip service. And will you do all this in the next 2 years to enable the town to cut 50% of our transportation emissions by 2030? Climate change is a crisis. Princeton and the planet urgently need you to act swiftly and with courage. I hope you will.
Thank you.
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. My comments are a little bit more mundane in that I think we need a lot of coordination, and I'm very glad about what Eve's comments. I think we have a lot of different transportation types, and we have very little communication between them and a great difficulty in getting information. And I don't think it all can be solved with an app. There are a lot of people that don't have access to that information. A lot of us who do maybe still need paper. We need paper schedules for the dinky. We need bus schedules for the dinky, for the New Jersey Transit buses in the station. We need freebie in the station. I had a lot of concerns with the freebie schedule that had recently come out, and Eve's been working on that. Because somehow it seemed as though the dinky station got left off the schedule. There are just a lot of really mundane things that need to be done, and only good coordination and cooperation can make those happen. Not necessarily high technology, but just communication. And I think Go Princeton is something that is yet to really meet its expectations. I think we need a lot of promotion. And I think that we need ads in the paper and just the usual mundane communication. And we can do a lot to enhance getting around our community, which in fact will help with our carbon footprint. So I'm just going to keep harping on that. And you know, I just feel that dinky is really an important part of this, and we're letting that gem get crumbed up, basically. And we've got to do something better. We just have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so please come to the microphone.
Yeah, hi. My name is Surinder Sharma, 237 Christopher Drive. I'd like to acknowledge the great work the Complete Street Committee did over the years, and also acknowledge Mr. Crumler's leadership. And Ms. Mayor, we always support you and will continue to support you. Any change is always good in the long run. So we appreciate for taking the action. But I also like to acknowledge all the people who worked on the Complete Street Committee. They were dedicated people. And we take this not a reflection on the performance, but a change. Change is always supposed to be better, and I think we will help you to make it better. And there were a lot of good ideas that we have been also contemplating, and will continue to work on those. And I wanted to again say thank you, and also acknowledge all the people, not only Complete Street Committee, but some of us also work on the Traffic and Safety Committee, which was a previous committee on this. So great work, and I think a lot of challenges are in front of us, and we have a great dedicated people in the community who are here to handle all those issues, whether it's the parking issues, which we are working on. We will share those thoughts with Deanna and also with the council, that we're looking at the design modifications. I can say that I'm looking into the guts of the meter. Why the solar cells and the batteries and the LEDs, they're not simple things, and they can be easily fixed, but they're the design issues which unfortunately we didn't have a chance to get into that. But I feel it from a system perspective, those are the issues that we really need to handle on a long-term basis, not a short-term basis. Princeton is not San Diego, and environments always makes any design different than what it works somewhere, doesn't work here. So those are the kind of things. I don't want to say that I brought it up this a few months back, that we should have really a deep study and deep dive into it, but we will do it. We will do it right, and we will find the solutions, and we are proud of that, what we are trying to do. Let's look at ahead and not look back, and we are here to help you, so I want you to know that. So thank you again, and I appreciate that. And thanks, Deanna, for all your hard work, and we will continue to support you and everybody else. And again, thank you, everybody who's listening on the Complete Street Committee. I'm proud of you. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. I think it's been moved and seconded, right, the introduction?
I think so.
Has it? Okay. Are there any final comments before we do a vote? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Right, the ordinance has been introduced, and the public hearing will be on February 25th, 2019. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry, don't we also need to do the second ordinance that we pulled also, because it had the second resolution?
No, we'll do it next week, yeah.
All right.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes. So moved.
Moved by Ms. Niedergang and seconded by Ms. Kremler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.